Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me for the second edition of the new series I've started called Bible Prophecy: Why We Watch and Pray. And today I'm just going to pick up where I left off yesterday. I'll just kind of start off sort of with a little bit of a recap from yesterday, and then we'll dive right into the things that I didn't cover yesterday. I actually thought I was going to cover the third beast from Daniel's prophecy, but frankly, I missed it and forgot. So we'll just pick up with the third beast today. But I just wanted to just sort of remind everybody sort of what my ground rules were. I'm going to let the Bible interpret itself wherever possible. The interpretation must remain consistent throughout the whole Bible. And I'm not going to try to it's got to be complementary, right? So that just helps us keep out of our own ideas and interpretations, and there's 18 gazillion interpretations of the Bible all the time. I'm going to try not to do that, and you can keep me honest on that regard. My sister Marita, whom I love dearly, is always challenging me to keep my mind sharp. Let's just put it like that, and doesn't let me miss a trick, and I love her so much for that. So in the mouth of two or three witnesses, we'll let every single word be established. That's another Bible principle. And then, of course, I'm okay, and I'm going to ask you to be okay with me just saying, I don't know. We'll keep studying. But if you have any questions anytime during my little talk or afterwards, I'm happy to field those, and you'll then give me fodder for my next batch of research as I continue to dig into this subject matter that has always been so close and dear to my heart. So, with that, I'd like to just sort of jump right back in to Daniel 7. I'll kind of just remind everybody what I read there. If I can, I'm just going to read back through it very, very quickly. I'm getting a little blind in my old age, so forgive me for being able to get a little bit closer here. So in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel said, in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions in his head while he was on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. So we see this great sea imagery. And the four beasts came up out of the sea, each different from each other. And I point that out because we're going to see a little later on the same imagery happening in the book of Revelation. So we can kind of connect these two visions, one given to Daniel and one given to the Apostle John. The four beasts came up out of the sea, each different from each other. The first was like a lion and had the great eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And we talked yesterday about the fact that that was Great Britain. I took a moment to pull up the seal of Great Britain, and we can see right there that is the lion, and it looks like a unicorn of some sort on their seal. And I looked at quite a number of their seals over history, and almost all of them have at least an image of a lion in there. And we know because the second symbol was the eagle that was pulled or plucked up from the lion and made to stand on its feet like a man. And we know that the symbol of the United States is the eagle, and that we came out of Great Britain. And we can see that right on our $1 bill, right there. You see that eagle right there. If nobody's ever seen a $1 bill, there it is. And we see that that's going to be a theme, right? It'll be either their national emblem, or maybe it'll be on their money, or in the case of one of the next countries that I'll talk about, I don't know if they have that there or not, but I do know that they have the association with that animal, and also the other signs or symbols in the scripture make sense when we talk about that country. So I'll continue right there. From verse 4 and say, and suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear, it raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. And we talked yesterday about the fact that that was the Russian bear. And the Russian bear, here's the coat of arms of Novgorod, Russia. And we see that they even talk about themselves or see themselves as the bear. And we see in many political cartoons of when you see the U.S. pitted against Russia, it's often either Uncle Sam with a bear or an eagle versus the bear. Everybody sort of knows that these are the symbols of these countries in the present day. We talked about the fact that in Bible prophecy, we haven't had that in but just 250 years. There haven't been countries on the earth that represented these symbols that Daniel spoke of in 550 BC. And again, I've said that this is what really excites me, is that I feel like we're living in the times when the Bible, so much of the Bible prophecy is coming to pass. And the culmination of all of this prophecy, right at the end of the age, it's called, Jesus says in Matthew 24, at the end of the age will be the return of Jesus Christ. And that is the part of the whole story that really has me excited the most. I'm very anxious to meet him face to face. And but we got to go through a few things before we get there. And so we'll just take it step by step through the Bible and find out about the times that we're living in and why I'm so convinced that the time is now. So going on, and this is where I left off yesterday. And after this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So is there a country in the world today that has dominated the political landscape and the military landscape, has been a world ruler, and has had dominion on it? We mentioned yesterday that when we say beast, that it refers to a king and or its kingdom. And this beast actually had 4 heads. And so the thought there is that it had 4 renditions or 4 times or eras that it was this ruling power that had dominion. And you might have guessed it already. This is referring to Germany, I believe. And Germany has the symbol of a leopard, and really generically of cats of that ilk. They've always had a certain fascination with cats. The leopard, of course, is also known as the panther, is also known as mountain lion. It's the same cat. And Germany, the current German tank is called the Leopard 2. And they had the Tiger tank in World War II. And there's been this association with Germany and cats for a very long time. And and we see also this interesting fact that I learned, I uncovered, I was studying not long ago, because there was people who were asking me about the Antichrist and whether he would rise out of the area of Europe. And we'll talk about that more later. But there was some indication that he would be Assyrian. He rise out of Persia. And I did some study and found out that the Aryan race from long back had 2 branches that broke out of the Aryan race. One was the Persians, basically, and the other was the Germanic tribes. So if you kind of recall, if you know anything about World War II, Hitler was fond of calling himself the Aryan nation, and the whole racist thing that he set up, of the Aryans being the best race and everyone else was inferior. Well, the Aryans came originally from Persia, ultimately from India, I believe, is what I read, but they branched out, they landed in Persia, and they broke up into Germany, and they're really related. They come from the same ancestry. And even in 1935, Iran was calling itself Iran, but the rest of the world referred to that region as Persia. And the Shah of Iran at the time made the decision to, and I believe at the urging of Adolf Hitler himself, is to get the rest of the world referring to that region as Iran. And then it's been known as Iran. But before that, the rest of the world called that area Persia. So I bring that up because if you remember the political cartoon that I showed you yesterday that brings all of these together, right? Here it is. This is a picture of the Russian bear sitting on the Persian cat. And we see that in the world today, don't we? With the British lion just looking on and not really doing much about it. The Persian cat, again, the Aryans sort of had this fascination with cats. That symbol is sort of surrounds them. And we see Russia today sitting in the center of Syria, and with one of its paws kind of spewing out over the Euphrates River, trying to get into Iraq, And you see coming from the other side, Iran has got themselves fully perched, which is Persia and the Aryans. And they're all sitting there in this region together today. And the Bible is talking about these countries many, many, many years ago. And an interesting fact also, just sort of to reinforce the idea that this might be Germany, is it had 4 heads, and it says dominion was given unto it. Every time Germany sort of breathes, without even trying, they seem to take dominion. And with that dominion, they try to rule over the whole world. They start wars. They always end up getting defeated, but they rule and dominate and have dominion without even trying. You know, the first came in 1870 or so, in the German Franco War, I believe it was. That ended just after the Holy Roman Empire, and I'll say a little more about that later. And that was sort of the first Reich of Germany, the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, which lasted from 962 to 1806. And then it was ended by France, and I'll say something about France in a second. And when Napoleon came in and really kind of conquered and established his footprint there, the Second Reich was Imperial Germany from 1871 to 1918, and that culminated in World War I. Germany was one of the key players in World War I, and they got defeated there. But they started it. The Ottoman Empire actually started it with Germany. There are kind of allies there, and they ended up fighting in World War I. Then, of course, the most famous of the Reichs, because the first 2 Reichs sort of got named in retrospect. They weren't called that as it was happening, but Hitler, when he came on the scene, said, "Hey, I'm calling that first period of German rule in Europe the First Reich of the Holy Roman Empire, and the second rule was Imperial Germany." And then his rule then from 1933 to 1945, he termed the Third Reich, and that's what we prominently see, the Third Reich. And isn't it interesting that it says that this beast had 4 heads, and Germany has had 3 periods so far where it is sort of ruled in the earth. And that means that the 4th head is on its way. And we can see even today, they were utterly vanquished in World War I, and in 20 years they were having dominion again. And they ruled over a large swaths of all over Europe, much of Russia, down south through Italy, northern Africa. Germany was, Norway, for all the upper region states there of Norway and Sweden and Finland. Germany just owned the place. And it was utterly vanquished at the end of World War II. But here, if we look in Europe today, what country is basically the economic power of the European Union and is running things again? You guessed it, Germany. Because dominion was given to this country, and they will dominate. And as you've seen, that's exactly what's happening. So I think that the 4 heads are the 4 times when Germany has sort of ruled. They've sort of had 4 renditions, each of them ending in a pretty catastrophic war. And there's going to be another one on the way. I hate to tell you the news, but the Bible talks about that, and we'll get into that a little later. So the 3rd beast was Germany, but I wanted to dive in to this 4th beast and spend the remainder of the time, and I might even spend, obviously, my next time, because the 4th beast is where I'd like to sort of go a little more into trying to connect the dots, because we can't see everything there is about this 4th beast and who it is and what it is without reading a fair amount of scripture, and also connecting the prophecies that God gave to Daniel with the prophecies that God gave to the Apostle John. And so we'll start doing that today, and we'll finish that up probably tomorrow. So if I continue reading in Daniel chapter 7, in the 7th verse, it says, let me say one other thing about the other. It says on the beast, the 3rd beast, which was the leopard, it said on its back were 4 wings of a bird. What does that mean? 4 wings of a bird. Well, what country has sort of been riding on the back of Germany in all of its sort of renditions has been right there, and normally has been engaged in the warfare to conquer, to stop Germany. In other words, ride in the back of the leopard. Well, none other than France. And I believe that this is France, but this one I don't really know for sure because there are other interpretations of this verse. But France is right there in the midst, and we see them in the last days as well. This here is the French $20 gold coin, and you can see the image of the Gaelic rooster right there on the lower left, I think, of your screen. It might be on my lower right. And the Gaelic rooster, it says, if you look it up in Wikipedia, is one of the national emblems of France. And it says it's 4 wings, right? No bird has 4 wings. Birds have 2 wings. So it suggests that either this is some sort of supernatural kind of bird, or it's just each wing represents one of the renditions that goes with the 4 heads, if you will, of Germany, that wing, Germany and France are always kind of rolling in lockstep, complimenting one another and fighting with one another and destroying one another, but they're kind of always in it together. And like I said, Napoleon, France went in and conquered Germany after that ended the Holy Roman Empire, Germany's first rule, and then World War I, France came in, and again, there was the armistice. They essentially conquered Germany. World War II, well, this time Germany kind of got the upper hand and whooped them for a little while, but then turns around, and with the help of the United States and Great Britain and Australia and all the other allies, France was able to get back on its feet and in the end occupy Germany. And now we see France and Germany just in lockstep in the European Union. They just basically are lovers there. They're right in there together as the 2 leading powers of the European Union, especially with the recent Brexit and the exit of the lion, which is kind of interesting, is that we'll see in this 10-nation beast that's coming up that Great Britain really isn't there. So it was necessary, and I thought that was very interesting, that Britain was a part of this European Union, and then the people voted to say, no, we're going to be some separate, independent. The lion is going to be independent a little bit of this massive beast of the last days. So I brought that up because, again, I just think the prophecy it's just amazing how Daniel could predict. This is such a testament that it had nothing to do with Daniel. Daniel was hearing it by the one who lives at the beginning and the end at the same time. The Holy Spirit of God was breathing it to Daniel and saying, just write what I'm telling you. And Daniel at the end even said, I don't understand what these things are. Explain them to me. And God told him, no, it's not for you, Daniel, to know. I'll reveal it to the people that are living at the time of the end. And that's what he's doing. He's revealing it to us. It's our privilege to get to know what God prophesied to these men who weren't allowed to know. I think that is just such an awesome thing. And God is very merciful and kind to show us the things that are about to happen in the earth before they happen. Before they happen. It gives us confidence, builds our faith, and it also lets us prepare and to plan for that. So finally, let me just read about, I'm not going to get very far into the 4th beast, but it's chapter 7, verse 7, and Daniel says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring and breaking in pieces and trampling the residue with its feet. Remember that, with its feet, it was using its teeth, and it was devouring and breaking in pieces, presumably with its paws. And trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts in that that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Let's remember that, 10 horns. And I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So there, I'm going to say, what is that beast? Well, for this, I just want to move forward in the scripture, because remember I said I'm going to let the Bible interpret itself. I'm not going to come in and try to come up with an interpretation. The Bible just tells me, what do those things mean? What are the horns? What is the rest of it? Does any of it mean something? As it turns out, Daniel, and I'll thank Daniel when I see him in heaven, for asking this astute question, God, will you give me the interpretation? And of course, God obliged him. And if you jump forward in Daniel 7, verse 23, here's the response of God. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the other kingdoms. and shall devour the whole earth, trample it and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings. So here we see the horns are kings themselves. The beast is a king, but the horns are also kings, having kingdoms. So these are now some sort of a 10-nation confederacy of some sort that'll come together. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. So they'll come out of this kingdom somehow, the kingdom of the beast. And another shall rise after them. And he shall be different from the first ones and shall subdue 3 of the first kings. So ultimately they'll end up with 7 kings because this little king that comes up after is going to squash 3 of them. So, and it says, and he, meaning this one that comes after them, shall speak pompous words against the Most High God. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High. That's us. I hate to break it to you, but we're in for some persecution coming up. And he shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time. Now, that terminology, a time, times, and half a time, it refers to the period of 3.5 years. A time being 1 year, times being 2 years, and a half a time being a half a year. And I will prove that to you when we move to Revelation. So we remember some of this, and we're going to get more detail about what this beast is by jumping over to Revelation chapter 12. In Revelation 12, we're going to see that God gave, that we see this prophecy he gave to Daniel showing up once again in chapters 12 and 13 of Revelation, right? And we're going to learn more about this beast, right? There's one other passage that's in Daniel chapter 2, if you want to read ahead, that also gives us some revelation about this beast. And before we're through, we'll be very clear about what the interpretation of this beast is and what we should look forward to in the earth. And we should be able to recognize this beast. Knowing what I know, I see the potential countries that will form this beast already here. And I see things like Europe coming together and the European Union coming together. And I believe that out of that region we'll see this beast emerge. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Let's see, how much time do I have here? I just have a couple minutes. So I might only get to read today, and then tomorrow we'll dive in and break it down a little more. So Revelation chapter 12. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, and a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Well, that's Israel. And the 12 stars represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Then, being with child, she carried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And then another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. Where have we heard that 10 horn thing before? Yeah, we just read it over there in Daniel. A dragon now has 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. Diadems, of course, the jewelry of royalty that indicates the royalty or the kingship of those heads. It says his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. So the dragon, we'll know, and we'll find a little later in Daniel 12, is the devil, and those stars are demonic angelic beings, because a third of the angels rebelled and became devils, right? And that's in other places in the scripture. So I'm just tossing that to you for free. But if you want to know where I get that reference, feel free to ask the question and I'll show you. So a third of the stars, and the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, this child is Messiah, Jesus, right? That was birthed out of Israel, right? Some people think that Jesus was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed European. No, Jesus was a Jew. He was Jewish. He had curly locks. It said he had hair like wool. He had curly locks. He was a Jew, right? And he was born in Israel, in the land of Israel, in Bethlehem. And he lived as a Jew, and he fulfilled all the law of the Jews that was given to him by Moses. And he fulfilled all the prophets. And he's still fulfilling them to this day. And he's about to culminate and fulfill a few more, not too many years, when he returns for the second time. So this child that was born from Israel was Jesus, because it says that he was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Okay, he was resurrected, then he went up to God on his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness. Israel fled after the resurrection of Jesus, right? And she's now resumed her place in Israel. She kind of went into the wilderness for all this period until 1948, and then she got reestablished as a nation, right? Where she was prepared a place by God, that they should feed her. Ultimately, at the end, should feed her there 1,260 days. There we go again with this 3.5 years. If you go by the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. They have 30 days every single month. So 3.5 years, do the math. That's going to come out to 1,260 days. So here's this 3.5 year terminology coming up once again, that Israel would be nourished for 3.5 years. And then it says, and war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, right? So now it's saying there's a war in heaven between Michael, the archangel, and Satan, the archangel that turned bad and became the devil. It says, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out. That serpent of old, serpent is the name of the devil. We know he appeared in the garden with Adam and Eve as a serpent. So he's always had this name of the serpent, right? So all of his names are going to come together here. That serpent of old, called the devil and Satan. So here the Bible is interpreting itself. It's, there's dragons. There's all this great imagery in the Bible, and who can know what a dragon is? Well, the Bible tells you what the dragon is. The dragon is the devil. So whenever you see dragon from now on, as you read in the Bible, you should think devil. Most of the time, this is going to be the case. Okay, so the great dragon, the devil, it says, who deceives the whole earth, and he was cast to the earth. He and his angels were cast out with him. And then he heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him with the word of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and because they didn't love their lives to the death. So we see that the devil is revealed who he is. We begin to see some of the imagery about that 10-horned beast, right? That 10-horned beast is a 10-nation confederacy who shows up to chase the woman Israel. So we see that going on also today. I mean, Israel, it's been Israel against the world forever, and we just see that so pronounced today. They can't buy a vote in the UN today, except the United States. Except the United States. And why is that? I have to read this part, and then I'll pause. I won't go to Revelation 13 today, but I'll come back and finish Revelation 12, and we'll talk about Revelation 13 as it pertains to the beast. I specifically want to sort of bring out the scriptures on the beast, and then I'm going to sort of make some assertions about who I believe the beast is and some what we know from the scripture about the beast. So, I'm not coming out of my own head and just sort of making my own interpretation, right? I'm really trying to use the Bible and let it guide me. And I hope that when you read it on your own, that you also will use the same exegesis. You'll also go through and begin to study the word and look at all the scriptures that pertain to a subject. And there you'll be able to understand really what it means. So it goes on and it says, therefore rejoice, O heavens, you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of earth and the sea. For the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. So here we see the devil having great wrath, and he's about to unleash his wrath on the earth. And I think that's an important point, because later we'll find that there's two people executing wrath in these 3.5 year periods. The last 3.5 before Christ is both Satan, and God also has a little wrath that he's going to pour out on the earth as well, right? But both are executing wrath, and it's important because we'll need to divide the word at some places where it says the wrath, right, that's on the earth. That God hasn't appointed us to wrath. That's true. He hasn't appointed the saints to his wrath. But it doesn't say anything about the fact that we're not appointed to the wrath of Satan. And in fact, it says that Satan will be given dominion during those last 3.5 years and will be able to wear out the saints of God, right? God will lift his protection and let the saints be tried by Satan. And here we see Satan coming, having great wrath, and he has no problem unleashing his wrath on the Jews and on the saints. That's who he hates, because That's who God has placed his seal upon. And so, and finally, my very last point, it says, now, when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman Israel, who gave birth to the male child Jesus, right? But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle. Where have we seen the eagle? Right? We saw the interpretation that came from Daniel chapter 7. We learned that the eagle was the United States. It was plucked out of the lion, which is Great Britain, right? So here, if we hadn't read Daniel 7, we would have no idea who the eagle is here in Revelation 12, right? But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place and where she would be nourished for a time and times and half a time. There's that 3.5 years in that same terminology again, from the presence of the serpent. In other words, she's going to be nourished from the attacks of Satan. Israel will be nourished from the attacks of Satan with the help of the United States. This is why I was so excited when I saw Donald Trump going in and showing such strong support for Israel. It didn't start with Trump. Back in 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, when Israel was attacked with a sneak attack on Yom Kippur, they were really getting ready to get crushed with Egypt from the south and Lebanon and Syria from the north and the Jordanians coming across from the east, and of course the Mediterranean Sea in the west. And they were basically all fasting and praying and on their Sabbath on Yom Kippur, and we're going to get squashed off the earth in 73. And Golda Meir, the prime minister of Israel at the time, reached out and called President Nixon and please send your support. And the U.S. responded to help Israel during that time. And then, of course, God responded by stirring up a dust storm and blinding all the Egyptians as they passed through the Sinai, so that it became basically giving Israel time to gather itself and to figure out a plan for how they're going to defend themselves during those years. And long story short, Israel ended up going and conquering Egypt first, turning around, pushing Syria north, went east, pushed Jordan back, and has been established ever since during that time. So the U.S. has been in a position of helping Israel and nourishing Israel all the way up till today. And that is prophesied in the Bible, that the U.S. would take that kind of position with Israel. And so to me, that is exciting. It's exciting to see such things written down long before they actually happen. And we see them playing out, and it will continue all the way to the end. I believe the U.S. will be a strong ally of Israel. Well, that's what I have to say for today. I'm going to conclude my time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to try to do this every weekday that I can. I might miss some weekdays if I have other meetings that come up, but I'm going to try to do every weekday that I can, sometime between 7 and 8. Okay? God bless you all. Love you.